The liberal camp in America has lost its focus. They forgot how to say what's wrong and what's right, what's good and what's bad, what's black and what's white. And you cannot live in such a world. Look at France, Italy. May she rest in peace, Oriana Fallaci. After 9/11, she pointed out the problem of Europe. And it's happening. It's happening on a daily basis.
This is a Visegrad 24 series about the Israel-Hamas war.
We are in Tel Aviv with another interview. With us we have Attila Somfalvi, a political analyst and also consultant. Welcome to
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.
How would you say that life is going about right now in Israel?
Traumatic or post-traumatic. I don't know exactly how to say, but I think the Israelis are getting used to the idea that they will have to fight this war for a long while. We're in a situation in which we're trying to understand what has happened on the 7th of October, first of all, to understand what happened, how did we miss it, how all the intelligence services that are the best in the world just missed all the signs that were out there. So that's the first thing. The second is looking forward and trying to stand behind two moral issues. One is stay together. We had a rift in Israeli society for 1 year, since January 23. And the other one is how to repair what is broken in Israeli society, in the military, in the Shin Bet, and so on. So those two missions combined are huge. And let's not forget the war is still going on. Israeli society is very flexible, elastic even, and it has the possibility and the power to recover very fast. You can walk around here in Tel Aviv now. We are very close to the beach. You'll see people on the beach even sitting and having some fun, sunbathing, and you can walk around in Tel Aviv in the restaurants in the evening. Perhaps you won't find the biggest parties, right, these days, but you'll find restaurants filled with people, and you'll find people going to parties and gathering in social meetings and gatherings. So yeah, Israelis want to live. We love our lives, right? And this is exactly the huge difference between Israelis and the Hamas and Palestinians. We celebrate life while they celebrate death. And you can see it as, just walk around and you see it. Post-traumatic, but very hopeful.
At the same time, right now, we have hundreds of thousands of people who either were in the army before or were called up as reservists and are posted on the border with Lebanon in the north, or are in Gaza or are close to Gaza. This is a level of militarization that is high, and people in Europe, where we don't have mandatory military service in most countries for a long time now, they are not used to seeing young people walking on the streets here with a rifle over their shoulder. You have 3 years of mandatory military service for men, 2 for women, but for both sexes. Do you believe that this high level of militarization is something that benefits Israeli society, not just from a security perspective, but more of a societal perspective, that young people have the opportunity to take responsibility from a young age?
For so many years, we have heard that the Z generation or whatever, the Y generation, whatever generation was here before, is lazy, is self-centered, is concentrated only on Instagram, TikTok, and flying abroad. And we saw those young people, 19, 18, 20, 21, and reservists, not going to our bases, running to our bases on the 7th of October, being there before they're being called by the system. It's not only good for the Israeli society, it shows how strong the Israeli society is linked together when there is a huge danger above it. I'm very proud of the young Israelis. I'm very proud of those carrying arms around. I look at those people on the streets of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem and everywhere in Israel. I look at those in Gaza or on the border with Lebanon. And I'm very proud as an Israeli to see that the citizens here in this country are so dedicated to the existence of their own country in the midst of a very hard neighborhood, a villa in a jungle, you know, and nobody wants to leave. Nobody thinks of leaving. Like, a very low percentage of people were thinking about leaving and going to live in Poland or in Hungary, Romania, or the United States.
We saw on October 7th and 8th that the planes were full of Israelis who were
Coming in.
abroad. Yeah,
Coming back home.
with flags. And
On the 8th and the 9th and the 10th, and people were standing in line to get back, and they were sleeping on the floor of El Al flights from Australia, New Zealand, and New York, and whatever, just to come back and to enroll. Not just to come back and sit here on the beach. To come back and to enroll and to fight. And to fight for the existence of the state of Israel, democratic state of Israel. And therefore, I have to tell you, Adam, I'm such a proud Israeli. You know, I've been born in Eastern Europe like you. I grew up in Romania till the age of 11. I know exactly what it means to love your country, and nothing compares to what's happening in Israel right now. And I'm very proud to see that.
you also worked in media for a long time.
30 years,
Yes.
all in all.
And now the media war is one aspect of the war, the disinformation war, the propaganda war, call it what you want. We are seeing these anti-Israel or pro-Palestine marches in American campuses on university territories. A lot of it seems to have been fueled by social media, especially TikTok has been, there's been a debate whether the Chinese are somehow fueling anti-Western but also anti-Israeli sentiment.
And anti-Semitic, of
And
course.
anti-Semitic, yes. Do you believe that this is what is going on, that our enemies have been allowed to take over with TikTok, an important part of our social media?
It's a very good question, Adam. I'm very thankful to you that you asked it, because one of the fronts that Israel is fighting on is the perception front. It's of influence front. Among the other things that I do, I'm also a researcher at the NSS, the National Security Studies here in Tel Aviv, and I study influence and disinformation. TikTok became a very strong weapon in the fight against Israel, in the war against Israel. Unfortunately, Israel lacks the capabilities and the knowledge how to manage a long-term influence campaign. Okay, we never do this. It's not because we don't want to do that, but you know, Israel was very busy with building itself.
Focused on other things.
Startup nation, high tech, and so on. So we said, people will understand what Israel is all about, but people do not understand because that's on the surface. Below the surface, Palestinians, fueled by Qatari money, fueled by the Chinese, that are, you know, everybody knows now that TikTok is controlled by the Chinese government. And we saw that, and we saw the algorithm, and we saw what is being pushed into our phones and our children's phones. It's not only ours, but hundreds of millions of people all over the globe that get this misinformation from the Chinese government itself. We see the Russians trying to interfere here. They have their own problems and their own interests because they have the war in Ukraine. So it's very good for them to have a Middle East war. So if you add it together, you see a huge machine of influence and disinformation working, not only to delegitimize Israel, but to destabilize Israel's democratic infrastructure, and they are trying to interfere in internal political issues and affairs in order to make a rift and polarization of Israeli society. And Israel wasn't there. Today, I have to tell you, there are a few companies and a few groups that are working on technological, technological part of it, in order to help Israeli influence to spread around. Because we are outnumbered in it, and they have hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars poured into anti-Israeli campaigns from American campuses, Ivy League colleges, to faculties, to professors, to organizations, to Black Lives Matter, you name it. Jewish organizations that are turning against Israel. When you have all this weaponry, that is very, it's a lot of money to pay. It's very expensive, and you have a state that it was focused on, just being the best at what it is. We have to run fast. We have to run fast. We saw what happened on the 7th, we saw what happened on the 8th, and we saw what happened on the 9th. But we also saw that on the 17th of October, Adam, the New York Times, the BBC, the Sky News, and many other media outlets all over, they embraced the narrative of Hamas, of these Nazi organizations that just 10 days before that butchered, burned, raped, decapitated Israelis in Israel 10 days before. And the New York Times embraced the narrative saying Israel bombed the hospital that was bombed eventually. We all know that by the Islamic Jihad. Nobody thought about it. No editor at New York Times knew the facts. What the hell happened? This is a problem of perception, of digging very deep and make people understand the issues and the issues that we face here in the Middle East.
Speaking about the New York Times, they recently let the mayor of Gaza sign an opinion piece article in the New York Times. They have been writing about the Gaza Health Ministry informing about the death toll of various bombings without mentioning that this is Hamas. There seems to be that regularly things are being reported in an anti-Israeli way. It doesn't seem to be one accident. But technically, the New York Times has historically been closely tied with the Jewish community in the US. Why do these magazines report so anti-Israel?
But I don't know about the connections or the links between the New York Times and the Jewish community in America. But I want to emphasize something else. There is a huge danger in the world today, named the progressives, the radical left, that is part of the liberal camp, actually. It's supposed to be. But we are facing today an imminent danger to democracies coming from the left, from the radical, from the far left, from those named progressives that are destroying all that we know about democracy and liberalism also. They're actually communists. At some point, if I may go even further, they are fascists and Nazis. This is the round that they have made.
Yeah, the horseshoe theory.
Well, exactly. The horseshoe theory here is active. They're so liberal, they won't let you say what you want. And if you say what you want, they're going to chase you down. And if you write it down, they're going to erase you, because cancel culture is normal today in the 21st century. So I can't tell you about Jews and the New York Times, but I can tell you about the New York Times and progressives. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because the liberal camp in America has lost its focus, their azimuth. They forgot how to say what's wrong and what's right, what's good and what's bad, what's black and what's white. And you cannot live in such a world. If you proclaim yourself as a liberal and democratic, media outlet, where are your moral issues? Where do you stand? What do you stand for? And unfortunately, not only the New York Times, you saw that the BBC, for example. What the hell happened to the BBC? It was supposed to be the beacon of democracy and freedom of press. What the hell happened there?
With the BBC, I think that this is another issue in America. This is just from progressive politics, nothing else. But in Europe, we have another factor we need to take into consideration, which is that over decades, we had a large influx of migrants from Africa and the Middle East. And traditionally, social democratic parties, left-wing parties, their politicians have been getting the Muslim vote, so to say. And now with this war, they speak in such a way that their voters will still have faith and trust in them. So even if the politician personally has a different opinion, but for him, politically, it's beneficial to stand on that anti-Israel demonstration like a Jeremy Corbyn or somebody similar and just spew this anti-Israel propaganda. What do you believe? How much influence does this influx of Muslim immigration to Europe have?
You come from Europe. I live here, but I follow closely about what's happening in Europe for many years. And I remember that 12 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, I was at Brussels, at the European Committee. And then, I met with politicians and representatives of many countries, and then I met with some journalists covering the Brussels on a daily basis for different newspapers in Europe. And one of the guys was a Danish journalist. And it was exactly a few months after what has happened in Denmark, if you remember, with Muhammad and the
cartoon.
The cartoon. And we were around the table, and I remember him saying, I'm censoring myself as a journalist because I'm afraid of sending in something that is criticizing anything that deals with Islamists or with Muslims or with the problems they face in Europe. Because I know that my editor will censor me and he won't publish what I'm saying. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? What happened here? This is Europe. What are we talking about? And that was 12 years ago. Now the numbers are rising, of course. And we know, I don't know how many kids you have, Adam. I have 2 here in Israel. And most Israelis have 3 or 4 kids. Israel is a champion of birth.
Yeah, no, I'm a European, I have none.
Well, guess who has? All right, all over Europe. Look at France, Italy, right? May she rest in peace, Oriana Fallaci. After 9/11, she pointed out the problem of Europe. And it's happening. It's happening on a daily basis. We see that. So to tell us that 10% of Europeans are not influencing their politicians, well, keep on dreaming. Of course they have influence. And the new generations of those coming into Europe from different countries, Muslim countries, now they want their rights, their political rights. The parents were busy. They just came in, they had to settle down, they had to work, they had to feed their children. That's hard for them to be involved. But generation 2 and generation 3, they won't sit quietly. And unfortunately, Adam, just one more sentence. Unfortunately, I'm saying that with a lot of sorrow, while you as a Polish, me and as Israeli, the Judo-Christian society is trying all the time to be mixed, to be combined, to be the best as it can be everywhere it goes, that's not the same thing with Muslim societies in Europe. Look what's happening in France, around Paris, go in Brussels, in any other city that you can point on, you will see that they live in small neighborhoods or big neighborhoods. They're close in they don't want to assimilate, to be part of European culture. Now tell me, when you have millions of people coming up, they want their own right to influence. And what kind of influence is it, Adam? I'm asking you.
Absolutely. Until now, as we mentioned, they have been geared toward the social democratic parties, but now recently they have even started forming their own parties, which are interest group parties for either Muslims or for migrants in general. We have an example in the Netherlands with Denk. In Sweden now there is also a party called the Nuance, which is basically an Islamist party. So it seems that this is the start of something new. But with Islamism, this is another issue that many people in Europe don't understand, that the Palestinian terror groups that were active in the 70s and the early 80s, they were guided by socialist ideology, nationalist ideology, sometimes maybe even some form of pan-Arab ideology. But Islamism wasn't a problem back then. But since the mid-80s, forward 90s and now 2000s, Islamism is a problem not just in Gaza, but across the Middle East. But however, Hamas is...
Across Europe.
And across Europe. And across
London.
Europe. Yeah.
Hello, London is calling, and Paris is calling, and Brussels is calling. And what about Berlin and the other cities in Europe? They're all calling, and Norway or Sweden.
But this Islamist component of Hamas, if you look at their charter, it's full of Islamist ideology. Why do the Europeans, because they suffered terror attacks during the years of ISIS 2015 to 2018, why are they blind to the Islamist component of Hamas?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I had no idea. I'm asking myself. I'm an European. I was born in Europe. I know the mentality. I know how to get around in Europe. I don't understand my brothers from Europe. Why are you standing still? Why the hell aren't you standing up for your values? Why? What happened? What happened to Europeans? I mean, I know that for 40 years, European gates were wide open. Wide open, right? And nobody said anything. Now, who are the first to close their gates? Who are the first to close today their gates? The French. And they are in Schengen, right? And you should be open to go between countries, from Italy to France, whenever you want. What are they doing? I watched Euronews just a few days ago. What are the French doing today? They woke up. So they're not letting in any people, any person. You're an immigrant? You're a refugee? Where did you come from? From Italy? Please go back. That's French policy today. French policy today. Emmanuel Macron is not Le Pen, right? But the rising of the right in Europe.
There is pressure.
Of course there's pressure, because people are saying enough is enough. What are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our culture? What are we doing to our values? What are we doing to our democracies? I don't mind people coming in and being part of our society. I do mind of people coming in and saying, we are going to change you. We're going to destroy you.
Chop off your head.
We are chop off your head if you don't because you're infidels. What the hell happened to Europe? I hope it's not too late. It's not too late. You can still repair it. But Europeans, I didn't understand that for many years. I do hope that our tragedy here from the 7th of October is a sign, is an alarm to everybody in Europe, everywhere. In Warsaw, in Budapest, in Bucharest, in Prague, or in Berlin, or Oslo, or Paris, or any other place in Berlin. Because people have to wake up and say, okay, we can open our gates, we can let you in, we can help you. We are humane, we are Europeans, we have our humanity here. But if you want to be part of the European system, you should be and behave like Europeans, with all the values that it comes with. Democracy, pluralism, freedom of religion, and you never, ever aim a gun or a finger or a knife towards anybody. It's not our values. This is what we should tell them. And you should tell them also in Europe.
If we look at the Middle Eastern region, there is the speculation that after the IDF has taken full control of the Gaza Strip, that you will have to turn your attention to the north, to Lebanon, and that potentially there could be an operation that will force Hezbollah to move back to the initial border, the line where they were supposed to be behind. Do you think that it is likely that there will be increased escalation in the north once you start getting control of the situation in Gaza?
I want to pray and say no. I want to hope that we can resolve this problem on a diplomatic path. I am not sure we will be able to do that. And you know, you don't have to take my word for it. Just take the chief of staff's Halevi word for it. Just in the past days, he was saying that the chances to have a full out or full scale war is much higher than it was before. So I don't know exactly what to tell you. I think many Israelis would like to see the IDF, Tzahal, kicking asses in Lebanon too, because it's incomprehensible how people, tens of thousands of people living in a beautiful region in the north, in kibbutzim, in small villages, whatever, on the border, are endangered by anti-tank missiles that are being shot at their houses now. They can't live there. And no sovereign state can accept the fact that a terrorist organization with people aimed to destroy you are staying on your borderline and just watching you and shooting at you whenever they want. That's incomprehensible, unacceptable. I do hope that the Americans and the Europeans will be able to retract Hezbollah forces over the Litani in the northern part of Lebanon. But if not, well, you know what they say. Israel will have to take care of what it has to take care, because it's not only a hit to the Zionist idea. It's a hit to the very clear idea of sitting and being and living whenever and wherever you want in the state of Israel, safely. Yeah. And taking out, having refugees in their own countries, in their own country. Tens of thousands of Israelis living outside their homes for 3 months now, more than 3 months. That's inconceivable. I wouldn't believe that there is one European person today that would like to see people commuting from place to place, from hotel to hotel, because there is somebody on their border that is shooting rockets at them. Show me one European country that will accept that.
And of course, Hezbollah is closely linked to Iran. The Houthis in Yemen, closely linked to Iran.
The good guys.
Yeah, the ones.
The good guys in Tehran.
In Iraq, you have also groups that are firing missiles at American bases that are clearly Iranian proxy groups. So all the traces, they are really heading back to Iran. And actually Hamas, most of their funding weapons from Iran. So what needs to be done with Iran by the global community, not just Israel here?
Iran is a threat to the Western society. Iran is a threat to the peace in the world. Iran is the biggest funding, except Qatar, of terrorism, of anti-Western movements. Iran has to be taken care of by the West. Now, I do not see at this moment any kind of movement of governments in Europe, and not even in the United States, that would like to take care of Tehran and the mullahs and all these terrorists sitting there in Tehran. I do want to believe that people understand the threat that nuclear Iran means to the world. Because I've said it before, when you have a state that declares out in the open that it wants to destroy another sovereign state, and it's Israel, when you have to take them seriously. And when there is one state that funds so many terrorist organizations, not only in our region, you can find them in South America, in Latin America, you can find them in Europe, you can find them whenever you want, even in the States. Hezbollah is everywhere. Iran is everywhere. Hamas is everywhere. Islamic Jihad is everywhere. And they're funded by Iran. It has to be stopped. I do not have a clear path how to stop them.
There is certain opposition, of course, within Iran itself, even more opposition in the Iranian diaspora that is living in America and Canada and the UK and other places.
Fantastic people.
What can we do to support internal dissidents that are against the regime?
The CIA, the Western secret services know exactly what to do. They did it for 50 years during the Cold War. They know how to support dissidents. They know what to do. You know, I remember as a kid, you are too young to remember, Voice of Europe, Free Europe Radio, Voice of America.
That's what our parents were listening to.
Exactly. My parents too, and even me myself. You know, I had a period of time that I remember that people were listening to these radios. This was the part of the Western fight for democracy and the moral support that they gave to us in the Eastern Bloc. So I mean, Western societies know how to fight when they want. And they have the courage and the will. I hope that we will find leaders who will face those terrorists in Tehran till the breakdown, and they can back those people who are standing gloriously, like they're real heroes in Iran. You see them once in a few years coming up, standing up against this dictatorial regime in Tehran. They go out on the streets. They are being shot dead on the streets when they demonstrate. Unbelievable. Hanged on the streets just because they are gays or whatever. So the West has a moral obligation to do everything it can to help these people.
We have an election year in America. America has been a long time ally of Israel. And even from the start of October 7th and this war, they started sending over artillery shells, 155 millimeter, Tamir missiles for the Iron Dome. There was some military aid, and there was plans for more. But now in Congress there is a gridlock, and both the aid to Israel and to Ukraine is currently frozen. Do you believe that this is something that they will be able to fix before the election? And what threat does it pose to Israel to have this uncertainty when it comes to American aid at the moment?
Let me use a phrase that I don't use too much. God bless America. And I mean by that that Israel is very lucky to have the United States behind it. We saw President Biden, who was unfortunately he was mocked here for many months and for many years because he's too old, too that, too here. But he was he showed up on the first moment to back Israel and to say, we are behind you. It's super important for Israelis. It's super important for Israeli military. It's super important to have America behind us. I won't get into exact details about what it means that you have, this bureaucratic problem that we have in Washington right now. The Americans are helping Israel even at this moment, and I believe with all my heart that the problems that you were describing are not necessarily problems that you feel on the field. And except America, Israel has also Germany and many other countries in the West that are still helping, and they are backing Israel in this war against terrorism. And it's super important. I think every Israeli understood on the 7th of October, on the 8th of October, how important it is to have America as a strong ally behind us.
There were some voices in the US that were saying that Israel should consider to not completely occupy all of the Gaza Strip, that they should go in, they should deliver a blow, but they should pull out like in 2014 and not going for the full victory, so to say. Is this something that you think that the Israeli political elite is willing to consider, or that is out of the question and Hamas should be eradicated from all of the Gaza Strip?
Hamas should be eradicated totally out of, it will take a few months. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be short. But going back to Gaza and controlling 2 million people there, that's satanic thought. Israel should not go back there. Israel has to control parts of Gaza land near the border in order to make
some buffer zone
between Israel and Gaza. That's sure. But Israel shouldn't stay there. We don't want to take care of their needs for education or welfare or sewage. It's not what we have to do. And we saw what's happening in Gaza. Sending our soldiers into Gaza with 2 million people hating us so much. And I don't want to generalize. I'm not going to do that. But you saw people in Gaza dancing in the streets on the 7th of October. And not everybody is to blame, and not every kid is a terrorist. But you have a huge percentage of Gazans supporting Hamas. So I wouldn't want to send our soldiers, young soldiers, into Gaza to be stuck there. I wouldn't want to send Jews to live there between these satanic people. I would like to see our forces, military forces, go in and out as much as needed, and eventually kill Sinwar and Def and all these terrorists. It will take some time. We shouldn't control Gaza.
All right. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, Adam.